And that's the thing. It's wild. I talk to people. There's so many people that came out of the Mercer County, especially in the Trenton area. Lots of people. We were talking about Richie earlier, Richie Cole.
Yeah.
Going all the way back, really my dad's era was the 40s, so there was tons of people from the jazz era to the rock, Maury, who played with Jim Croce, was from Trenton.
Guitars, absolutely.
all those great guitar parts. So all these people have come out of there, and it's great. You know?
His sister wrote a book, but I don't know if it ever came out.
I don't know. I met his sister. I was playing at, it was Kathmandu then. I was playing with John Eddy about 5-6 years ago, and his sister came out to a few shows, and our roadie at the time was trying to get Maury into, there's a Trenton Hall of Fame, I want to say, or Trenton Music Hall of Fame, maybe they're doing.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that.
I think they're working on that. So, which is pretty cool, and he would definitely qualify. I mean, her book would be great. Her brother had his own record. Crazy tie-in is my grandfather owned he had his own barbershop on Hermitage. And Maury's father had a clothing store that my dad used to buy clothes at.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, talk about a tie-in. So, a lot of friends moved away. I never had a burning desire to really leave New Jersey. I mean, I've lived up north. I lived in Philly for a while, but I'm back in Mercer now. And, it's a cool thing. There's a lot going. Yeah, family, friends. There's a lot going on. You got great clubs like I think you were saying you're playing up in New Hope. Whether it's New Hope or Bordentown or wherever, there's a lot to draw from. So it's pretty cool.
Yep, and family, keeps you grounded and everything. We're just talking about Lady Gaga, who you've played with, and she stays on the East Coast, and she talks about her family all the time. Just kind of like how it's hard to sort of like just get away from all that.
It is. I love a lot of places I've been to, but to pick up and move like 3,000-4,000 miles away from home, to sit in a place by yourself and have to not start over, but make new friends. Something about being home that feels comfortable.
Plus the seasons and everything. Exactly. It's like Bill Hicks used to say. He's like, his album Arizona Bay. So I was reading Jeff's thing, and I read another thing, and then it takes you back to your dad. Your dad was. It does. Ran the Musicians Union, I guess.
He did. He was president when I joined. I want to say I was 16, so like 1984. Around there, and he got it from my grandfather. Even going back to my grandfather, when he came over, was really a guitar player, and then played guitar, played gigs. Was a barber by trade, but played gigs. He would work in the barbershop all day, and then he would go play gigs at night.
Nice.
And then when he was around 40, he picked up the bass, upright bass.
Okay.
And went on to play with the Trenton Symphony. My dad got into it when he was 9, started playing trumpet. Fast forward to me in the mid-'70s. My dad was a school teacher after he was done playing and touring, and bought a drum set, put it in the basement for me or actually for him to teach his students.
Right.
And I discovered it and started banging. And after a couple weeks or a month or so, he said, "This just sounds awful." He said, "We just got to get you lessons. If you want to take," he goes, "We're gonna get your proper drum teacher." And I started taking lessons, and I really did not take to the reading and the book stuff. I was not into. Matter of fact, from Danny Lombardo down at Lombardo's, when it was on, I guess it's Hamilton Avenue. It was on.
I don't know if I know that.
Yeah, and it was a little tiny shop, and then he moved to Independence Mall, where it was a humongous store. But I took lessons from Danny, didn't quite get the book stuff. I quit, and then I ended up going back. Fast forward about a year or two later, my dad took me to see Buddy Rich in New Brunswick.
Okay.
And I literally walked out of there, and I was like, "That's what I want to do with the rest of my life."
So you're from Ewing, but you didn't go the Tony DiNicola or Dave McGraw.
I went to both of them.
Route? Okay.
I went to both of them.
Okay.
Well, and then I was getting to, after I saw Tony, my dad goes, "All right, here's what we're going to do. I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to be able to play like that," not realizing what an absurd thing that was. But he goes, "All right, I'm going to get you another teacher," and he took me to Tony. And I went to Tony, and I probably, looking back, again, did not take to the book stuff, but I was so inspired, he was a friend of Buddy's. I really got it then. And then I started with him for a while, and then I went up to Dave later. And that's really, with Dave McGraw, is really where I got my reading together, because Dave put me in the Realistic Rock book, the Carmine Apiece book. Then I kind of connected the dots because I was like, okay, here's a guy playing, Carmine's playing I loved.
I forgot about that book.
Yeah, and I was like,
is that brown cover or something?
Yes, at the time it was a brown cover.
That. I
yeah,
forgot.
Isn't that crazy?
And then, that is, because I remember the red cover Buddy Rich book.
Yes, the red.
That was the one that everyone seemed to start with, or at least Dave started.
Yeah, no, and I still teach my students with those two books because they're two great books.
How about that?
They're just like the bedrock of like counting quarter notes, basic rock beat number one, and it goes up.
Yeah,
exactly. So that was kind of my whole entry, and that's how I got into it, and just started physically playing, and then like you said, my dad was a musicians union. I kind of joined the union with a built-in gig because my dad had his own band.
Right.
So he would say to me, "Here, listen to these records. You got to play like this." Or I'd play a gig, and he'd go, "No, not like that. Like play like this, or you got to get this feel, or work on this thing, or So I had like a really great learning experience. And all these guys were pros, where a lot of my friends were kind of just banging it out in bands, which I did later, but I kind of joined with this gig and kind of had to get up to speed, which I think kind of set the pace for all the gigs I've done after that. Have all been I've stepped into these gigs that were all up and running. It's been rare, and I mean, one of my first bands, I guess, was in 6th grade with my buddies, and that was sort of like a get in the basement, learn songs kind of band. But other than that one band, for the most part, I was really lucky.
Who was in that band?
So that was Joe and Mordino. And who Joe plays around. Joe's got a band called Slightly Used now.
Okay.
And it's him and a bunch of guys, and they play around. But it was him and his cousin at the time, Phil Mordino. And
I know that name so well.
The Mordino's been same thing. Another
Trent
Ewing,
was so
Ewing
Italian
family.
at one time.
Yes.
I mean, I have this book I have to show you with Plumber Eyes in it and stuff.
Nice.
But
right, and they're all
every name is Italian. It's
absolutely
crazy.
Right. But the band was called the Black Rose was our band. We played a school dance. And then we changed the name of the band to Emerald Sky for some reason.
There you go.
We felt like we needed a name change.
That's a good name, right?
Yeah, right. So that was it. And other than that, though, I was really lucky to step into it. So I've been super fortunate to step into these situations. So maybe that training with my dad was really, really well used.
You went into it with a real professional attitude. Where everybody else was just kind of like.
And that is funny. I never grew up with that. Like, I got to get a record deal because I guess I had the gig going with my dad, and then I was doing other gigs. So I kind of sidestepped certain things and then kind of really came full circle to where I'm back playing now with John's band and doing that stuff and then doing the tour I did. Like, It's crazy that I never aspired to that, but I ended up stepping into it or being at the right place at the right time.
Just jumping right to the tour. I mean, for those who are not familiar, 2013, I guess it was September, maybe?
September, that's right. Right after Labor
Day. Tico got sick. They called you flew out. But then you were on standby to the very last second, right? Because he was going to do the gig, which was like the following Friday or something.
Yes, I heard a bunch of stuff. So first it was, we're going to get you ready. You might do the gig. You might just be there. They weren't sure. And when it was clear that he was going to need some time, I did 3 quick days of rehearsal with the band, and then we were on the third day. We finished rehearsal on a plane. We got in a car on a plane to from JFK to Rio, and that was it. Three rehearsals to kind of digest everything. A few of the being I played with John's solo stuff. His side band, the Kings of Suburbia. I had maybe a handful of them under my belt, the band songs, but the rest were, a lot of different arrangements over the 30 years. They had morphed, the endings had changed.
Yeah.
So I really had to digest that all super quickly. So it was a lot of note taking, a lot of listening, a lot of, okay, that's great, but fix this or change that, or when we do it this way, we're going to do it like this. So, and I said to John, I'm going to give you 200%, man. That's all I can.
It's probably good that you had to concentrate on the music. Then you didn't have to really think about treating it like a gig.
That was exactly it. I had I couldn't play like Tico because that would feel weird to try to copy somebody.
Yeah.
But I had to get it in the ballpark. I had to stay pretty true to the arrangements. And people have asked me that, and I said I really did very little embellishment because. That would really start to take away from the songs. They're set. People know them the way they are, And but at the same time, I kind of had to get somewhat inside of the way he did things, the way he played. He really digs in, and Tico's a great rock drummer. He really digs into those.
That brings
parts.
up like a whole other conversation about like drummers that.
It's iconic. I mean, those songs are any band you could take, and like you said, whether it's Bonham or anybody. And like you said, that's probably a whole nother show. How do you step into that and respect the part? Respect the part, but update it. And I think one great example.
Tighten it so it.
So I would say one great example of that. I try to use it as inspiration is Abe Laboriel Jr. with McCartney's band. And when you listen to any of the solo stuff, Paul's band now, you hear Abe playing all these classic Beatles songs. But when you hear him play, Ringo parts, you go like, wow, he's really copping the part, but somehow it sounds fresh. It doesn't, no offense to Ringo, but it sounds like he's updating it for what, the way they're playing now.
Like that medley of the end thing.
That's right.
You get the drum breaks and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
So I tried to do that, respect the part. I don't know, I had one drummer friend of mine said he listened to the whole show in Rio, and he said, I could tell it was you playing, like I could hear little things. So I don't know if some of my stuff seeped in just automatically, or I purposely did it, but somehow we got it together, and I survived.
I clicked on the Rio thing, and I listened to the beginning and stuff. And I'm just thinking mindset wise, it's got to be kind of like adrenaline. You want to get up there and you just want to get into it and get it started, man. So you can really, like it's that moments before, but then. There's got to be that initial uncertainty, but once it feels good and you feel like, okay, I'm comfortable and it's working, then you can kind of kick back, and it starts to sort of just flow, and then you can sort of like, but there's probably about a half a song where it's just, you just want to, and the monitor just being slightly adjusted and stuff like that.
I wish everybody could experience that. One of the crew guys said to me, he goes, man, right before we went on, you look like you had ice in your veins. You were so calm. And I said, Dean, I wasn't really as calm as I looked, but I said, as a drummer, the whole foundation, sits on the drums. And I said, if I were to show you guys that I'm nervous or I'm feeling a little freaked out, that's a bad thing. That'd be like walking on a plane and the guy saying, I don't know if I can land this thing. I'm good with takeoffs, but I'm not so good with, something, you want that kind of, you don't want to have someone go like, yeah, I'm nervous. And of course, it's like you said, it's natural. There was like 90,000 people there. So what I tried to get into was the headset that you're going to be nervous. Just give yourself permission to just feel the nerves, feel that going, and just do a Zen thing and go like, I got to count off. So I had to count off a lot of the tempos.
There you go. So you're not using a click, or?
So there was only a couple songs that they had a click on.
Oh, really?
But for the most part, no. It was all just... I started off playing for a while ago was Kenny Aronson, was with John Eddie's band, and Kenny comes from Bob Dylan's band, going with, like you said, Graham Mabey, who all the Joe Jackson stuff, and Natalie Merchant, and Marshall Crenshaw. Great. I mean, he's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite bass players, because another guy you're just playing to, and it's just so comfortable it just sits there.
Yeah.
And then Hugh, lucky enough to play with Hugh, play with Jack Daly from Lenny Kravitz's band.
Yeah, I don't know him.
Jack's a great, he's an Asbury guy now. Does some amazing stuff, some producing stuff. And but he did all the, he was touring with Lenny for, it was a while. He did all those tours with them.
So Asbury. So, basically you were around here, and then you started to gravitate to playing shore gigs and hooking up with sort of like the Southside crew and Bobby Bandiera and
you know how that
Stone
really
Pony, I guess, and just all that whole large network.
And I feel like I came to it late. A lot of the guys I play with, Billy Hector, got to mention Billy Hector, amazing blues guitarist who I still play with, and Billy plays John and Peters. He'll play Tara's Tavern down just south of Bordentown. But I came to the Asbury thing really weird. I was living in North Jersey at the time, and I was between gigs, and I put an ad on Craigslist of all places. I was just like drummer,
I love that.
Touring drummer, available to tour, play, record, whatever you need. And lo and behold, I get a call from John Eddie's people. John Eddie, another shore guy who was on Columbia for years.
Sure.
And he called me, and he was like, I don't know if you know who I am or my band, and I had studied with Sean Pelton from Saturday Night Live. And Sean was one of John's early drummers, amazing drummer. And we kind of connected the dots that way. And I said, yeah, I totally know who you are. And he goes, well, I don't know if you want to come down and audition, but I've seen all these drummers, and nothing's working, and maybe you want to come out. So I did. And I ended up getting the gig, and that got me into the shore, like you said, the shore scene there, the Asbury, the Monmouth County scene, and started doing the Pony. He was actually touring a lot at the time. We were doing a lot of Chicago and Midwest, and we were going to Vegas and Tahoe, and we were playing Cabo Wabo Cantina, Sammy Hagar's place, and he was like, I mean, it was like a dartboard tour. It was like one night was in New Hampshire, the next night was in, could be Baltimore. So it was a lot of jumping in the van, a lot of van stuff with John, but great stuff we did. And I had left the band, and he called me back before I left. He said, "I'm doing a recording. Can you record for me? We're doing some demos." And I said, "Sure." So I was in the studio with Southside Johnny's front of house guy, who was Joe Prinzo, and great guy who's done all sorts of stuff. And I said before I left, I said, "Joe, I left John's band." I said, "Does Bobby ever use any different drummers, Bobby Bandiera?" And he said, "Yeah, he does." So he gave me some CDs, and he said, "Here, take these 3 CDs, learn this stuff." So I shed on it. I learned 40 something songs. A week goes by, I don't hear nothing. A month, nothing. Couple months, 6 months, 8 months, goes up to like a year. I thought, well, maybe he didn't want to use me, or maybe he was busy. But I just kind of sat tight, and then at the end of the day, I thought, well, he's probably running around doing a lot of stuff, because Bobby was still with Southside at the time. Okay. So lo and behold, like a year later, he called me. Joe called me. He goes, "Man, we do this thing called the Hope Show every year. Benefits all these different local charities." Started out there at the shore at the Count Basie Theater. Okay. So he goes, "Want to know if you want to come play?" And he had originally said, "Yeah, Bobby does this place, the Columns, down in Avon. It's like a Sunday night gig. It's great. It's low key, laid back." But he calls me to play this Hope Show at the Count Basie, and it was a benefit. And he said, "Want to know if you want to play with John Bon Jovi? We're going to do a handful of songs, maybe 4, a couple of his songs, a couple of Christmas songs, and maybe a blues or something like that." So I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." I'm like thinking, holy cow, I thought it was going to be a little low key thing, and that was literally the first time I ever played with Bobby. And to boot, Bruce came out, and we all did Run Run Rudolph. So here we are playing like Chuck Berry. So like, talk about wow. Hell yeah! It was like, man, I had some friends and family there. It was like they were in tears. It was like, oh man,
nice.
It was crazy. It was a really. Before we went on, I see the set list that said with Bruce, and I was like, well, again, talking about like the Jersey thing and the history thing, and just passing on the generations, and like we're talking about names and people and how we all kind of stay here, and it's this thing, and it's pretty crazy. I sent the video. There's a video of it. It's on YouTube. It's John and Bruce are doing vocals, and we're all playing Run Run Rudolph, and I sent it to a great promoter I was working with at the time, and he said, "Man," he goes, "we're all just Chuck's children playing Chuck's songs,
It's really neat, and that pulse was still generating enough to suck you into it, and
it was
kind of bring you in.
It was,
and give you that whole opportunity. I mean, it's still
Bruce. You had all the guys that came out of Bruce's band, and that were all, Southside, they were all in and out of those bands. Somewhere there's a book, there's a great book about Bruce, and there's like a family tree. Yeah. And it's all those bands that Vinny was in, and David Sanchez, and all these guys, and Southside, and right, and then Bobby came into the mix. Right. It's something that we can claim as being from New Jersey, that we have a sound and we have a thing, and not only that, but we have places and bars that the Pony's still going. You can go there. To me, the Pony is every as important as the whiskey is in L.A. or CB's was in New York, or even City Gardens. Another talk about real hometown right in our backyard. All those places are like, wow, that's probably a whole nother show. But it's great to claim that, and like you said, to get into that scene, or you see kids coming up now and going there. It's something to aspire to. So that's pretty cool.
And I saw Bruce at the Spectrum in 2009, because we were just talking about the Spectrum too when he first came over. And
I'm still upset that they tore the Spectrum down.
Yeah, I was just there. It's a shame. Like I was just saying the other night, and I took a picture of the parking lot where it was.
I think I saw it. Yeah, you posted it.
I did. Yeah, I brought Sarah over there, and I was like, "This is." When I first had to find it, I'm like, "That's it." I don't even think there's a plaque or anything, but it's just a parking lot. You're like, man, can you imagine? just the history of stuff, and Bruce in general. Like,
his history there,
his history, his music. You know how he's just the quality of his stuff is just so high.
I mean, you know, Bruce's thing was that he really broke in Philly, going back to the Bryn Mawr, to the Point, the main Point.
Right, that famous show.
Yeah, and a couple of the guys I still work with, Midnight Sun Company, promoted the early shows at the Tower. And so that was when Bruce first, I think Philly, Upper Darby was that first market, if I'm not mistaken. One of the managers could tell it better, but that really broke him. That was one of the first times he left playing clubs to play the Tower Theater, and that was like a big deal.
Yeah, Philly. You know, Philly broke a lot of people.
Yeah, it really did.
The DJs there and the whole radio circuit.
Right.
You know, Ed Shockey and Pearson, all those guys.
Yeah, Pierre still down there.
Yeah, they broke.
I still like listening. You know, when you listen to his show and he talks about the history, he'll tell you a story about it. I love that. You know. And
now, speaking of breaking artists, when you recorded with Gaga, I guess that was kind of through Rob Fusari.
Rob Fusari, and that was at his house, his home studio in Piscataway. It was at the time. I don't think he's there anymore. No. And what happened was, I was working with a good friend of mine, a producer named Earl Cohen, who had done a lot of stuff, a lot of big records, and he had called me to work with he said it was like a punk band. It ended up being a little bit more. I thought it was not punk in the sense of Sex Pistols, but more newer kind of punk. And I was doing a bunch of stuff, and he was getting me on different things. And he called one day and he said, "My buddy, I recommended you to my buddy Rob. He wants to use you. We need a rock drummer. We got this artist. She's not really a rock artist, but she's doing some stuff, and they need a hard-hitting rock drummer to come in and play some tracks." And I said, "Great." So I would usually, you know, make some notes. They'd send me an MP3. I'd make some notes. And so I said to him, "What's her name?" Because I would write the name of the artist in the top right corner. And like I said, it was a lot of local people, a lot of people that were just, you know, getting stuff together. And so he goes, "Well, it's this girl Stephanie, and we're trying to get her signed, and you know, we think it's gonna work, but we don't know yet." But so I go down to this house in Piscataway, and Rob's there. And I might have, if I'm not mistaken, I might have played a couple things for Rob already. So he kind of knew my playing. He had a great setup. It was like a little row home, like an old school. You walk down a hallway on the first floor, and there's a bathroom, and then there's a bedroom and another bedroom. So he had this humongous board in one of the rooms, and then he had the little brand new Ludwig set in the other room. And I start hitting, and we're getting sounds. We get sounds for 10 minutes or something. Maybe not even, maybe 5 minutes. So it was really cool that he knew his place, and it was like he got the greatest sound in just a couple seconds there. And so we start cutting, and there's this girl there, and she's dressed kind of like a you know, somebody I would have went to school with in the 80s, like tights, right, and like a cut off thing off her shoulder, like a tank top, and then like something over it. So she looked like she just stepped out of, like, you know, my high school or something. And so this is Stephanie. She was kind of quiet, and so we take the song was already done, and I just laid down the drums over it, and then they muted the drum machine, and we did a couple takes. Okay, great, do this, try this one more. Okay, great, we got that one, and I think I did 2 songs. The one I have on my website, and that was it. And one funny story: we're sitting there listening to a playback, and it was Rob at the board. And then Gaga was, you know, Stephanie was between us, and then I was on the end in this bedroom, so it was kind of tight. And so we're listening and this and that, and at one point I thought she dropped something on the ground because she, you know, I'm kind of listening, and I looked down and I was like, where did she go? And so I thought she was on the floor picking something up, and she was actually laying on the floor, like dancing, getting into it, dancing and kind of, you know, thrashing around. I thought, wow, cool, she's really into it. And but it was cool. It was a great experience, you know.
Yeah, well,
it was really fun.
Hey, Richie. Okay. All right. I'll see you back. Well, yeah, from Richie Cole to Lady Gaga.
Yeah. So in one shot, right?
Yeah, I think from there she went and did the sort of Lollapalooza thing with the where she really took off her clothes and got into the whole Gaga mindset.
Right. That's
when
when
she fell out with Rob, you know.
Yes,
there was that whole 06, 07 era with Rob.
That's exactly when it was. It was exactly. I went down in the late 06, and actually I could tell you exactly the day it was because I put dates on my notes too, my charts.
Oh, okay.
So pretty funny, and I still have it, you know, to this day. So it's kind of cool.
That's pretty interesting, yeah, because we're like the spring of 06 when she first came over to Rob. Talented guy, he got his hands into a lot of stuff, and that first year that they worked, they did a lot of tracks. They probably
Right.
did 20 or 30 tracks, you know?
They did. Actually, I think the tracks I played on, my buddy told me that they were one of like maybe 70 or 75 tracks
Wow.
that were submitted to Interscope that the deal was signed on. So the song I put up on my website is not on the record, but it was submitted, and it's weird. It was in the papers when he sued her for $30 million or whatever he settled for 15. I think it's common knowledge at this point, but the spin you always hear, like when you hear that. And I've heard it brought up on talk shows before, you know, oh, this guy was her boyfriend and this and that. It gets painted as like, because no one's going to know the name Rob for Sorry, you know, unless you look at back of CDs, which I don't even know if anybody buys CDs anymore. But it kind of was painted like this whole, like, you know, he was a boyfriend, jilted ex-boyfriend that wanted to sue her. Rob had gold records long before, you know, there was a Lady Gaga. Rob did all... I think,
and they started with a rock sound. And,
yes.
And then at one point, Rob was like, "You know what? The rock, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Let's try this dance thing." And she was like reluctant, and yet they.
Yeah.
And he just started banging on the drum machine. They came up with the "Dirty Rich" song.
Dirty Rich.
And,
that's right.
And
Paparazzi was probably an early one.
Paparazzi's an early one from those days, and that's a great song.
Great song.
That's a really hit. Song.
Well, I just did a thing at Rider University. I did a little lecture, and one of the things I said, I was like, I'm really interested to see what you know, what students and kids are doing now. That to me is where, you know, where things are at, or you know, what's come, next generation is coming up with, because that's interesting. You know, Dizzy Gillespie said once, you gotta have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. So if you're only a vintage person, you're only like everything. I never subscribe to that, like everything sucks that's new. You know, there maybe some stuff is bad and some stuff is great. You got to weed it out, you know. But Gaga was one that, you know, same thing. When I heard her, I was like, wow, this is really cool stuff.
Yeah, and next thing you know, you see her on the charts, and you're like, hey man, that's that girl that was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I never could have imagined that one. I mean, wow. I mean, you know, I thought she had something, but you know. Sometimes you can't. I'm sure somebody. When my dad's godfather did some early gigs with Sinatra when he was coming up.
Yeah.
I'm sure he could have never foresaw that he was going to explode or become Frank Sinatra. You know, and he did some literally like little roadside bar gigs with him back in the 30s. So.
Wow, man. So you signed on for a tour or two, I guess, right? A Canadian tour, I think.
Yeah, when it was sort of. Apparent that he wasn't going to get back right after we did what was it, 4 shows. We did Rio, we did Argentina, I did Chile and Mexico City. So those 4 South American dates. When it was apparent that he was going to need a few more days, they asked me to go to North America. We went up to Canada. We did a date in Canada, and then I did 1 or 2 dates in Washington. I think I did Spokane, and I did another town. I'm blanking on the town. 2 in Washington State, and then we came down. I think it was right to California, and Tico came back in Fresno.
Okay.
So he was back there, and I stayed till just the end of the week. Fresno, LA, and then Vegas. And after the Vegas gig, I went home. So I kind of just hung out and watched the show, which was really, really great to see. And it was great to see him play the show. That was a learning experience in itself. And I talked about that to him. I said, it's great to see you do. I mean, he owns those songs. So to see him play that stuff was pretty cool. To sit from me to you on the riser behind him, to see him play, and that stuff was pretty cool.
I imagine most of those guys are pretty well adjusted, because you couldn't not be and still be surviving after all those years.
They really are. Great bunch of people, and you're absolutely right. How could you got to keep yourself grounded. You can't, I mean, no offense, I've read so many rock biographies, and a lot of guys have, you get on the road, you get crazy, you party, women or whatever the case might be, and you're like, you really do have to take it back a notch. And one of the guys said to me when I was on the tour, like, don't get used to this. I said, no, not at all. I always had that mentality. I think, again, going back to my dad, that working musician mentality always seemed cool to me. And right after we got back from Rio, I was playing a gig with Billy Hector down at Marlin's in Point Pleasant. So I was schlepping my drums. I think it snowed that day too, or it snowed the day before. So here I was schlepping my drums, 2 days after someone's carrying my bag, and I'm.
But the Long Island connection, I'm pretty sure.
Right, Joey Franco from the Good Rats. I'm sure it's a lot of those same guys, because I don't think it was a. Yeah, I'll tell you another guy I really loved that not a lot of drummers talk about is Hunt Sales.
Oh, Hunt
And
Sales.
Hunt Sales is one of my favorite drummers.
How about that?
You know, all the Iggy stuff. Whether it's their, you know, him and his brother Tony doing their thing,
Right,
their
the Tin
review.
Machine
Yeah, the Tin Machine stuff. I mean, that's all.
He played on early Rundgren.
So he was in the scene. He is one of my favorite all-time drummers. His feel, his whole vibe. I mean, his gear. You know, he uses the big. He was, you know, again, another Buddy Rich guy. He was friends. You know, his dad, through his dad, Soupy Sales. He was friends with Buddy. But it's yeah, he's one of my favorite drummers. I had such a compliment. A keyboard player we play with in John's band said to me, "Man, you remind me of Hunt Sales," and I'm like, "That's a great compliment. I love that compliment." You know, he's loose and he has that rock thing, and he hits the way he hits. So he's one of my favorite players. Like guys that, you know, a little bit off the beaten path that you don't always hear.
Because I mean, it comes down to feel. I mean, a lot of people can play technique. You know, you see there's a lot of technical players, but really it's the feel, man. It's that you know, if you can play a straight 4 and with the right feel, you know, that's what it really comes down to.
That's it, and that's my favorite. Some of my favorite music, whether it's Stax or Motown or some, you know, straight ahead.
You know,
it is right. It's such a you know, intangible thing. Like, how do you? I had a student say to me recently. I was trying to show him we were in the Jim Chapin book, which is another classic book I teach out of, the Advanced Techniques book, and he said. He goes, yeah, how do you get that feel, that thing you're doing to feel? I said, yeah, that is the $1 million question. I think the same. Thinking to myself, I've probably thought that about my heroes 1,000,000 times. Michelle Engermiller did a great article, too.
But you saw Kiss at the Spectrum. You were like,
oh, my first show.
That was my first show, too, man. And when we saw him, we were so young that Bob Seger was playing. We couldn't figure out if it was Kiss or not. Is that Kiss? I don't know.
Right.
And then, like, you know, the lights went down, and then Detroit Rock City, man, and just explosions and bombs.
It's great.
And we were like...
I mean, I'm still nostalgic. Anytime, you know, you could say whatever you want about Kiss, you got... And the great thing about Kiss is you either hate them or you love them. Or you go like, I get it, and it's great. And for what it's worth,
love the first 3 or 4 albums, like I do. You know, that initial era.
That era, that '70s, early '70s when they blew up, and when I think of that, and I think of the '70s, I was riding my bike recently, my old neighborhood, and I went past the house of the kids I went with. So it was like my buddy, his sister, their parents drove, and my dad. You know, girls like bras raining on the stage, girls throwing their bras, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get involved in this. This is something cool.
Wow.
But I was in 5th grade. I literally went back to school the next day, and kids were like, I told them I went to see Kiss. They're like, no, you didn't. They just didn't even believe me.
Yeah, you can't even.
I was like, I know. I got tickets and I went. You know,
it couldn't even be comprehended, man.
No, it was
back when you looked at albums, it was like from another planet. You know,
it
like,
was.
Might as well be from like the moon. And then you grow up and you realize, hey, it was recorded right at this studio that I'm in right now. Or,
right.
You know.
Right. You know, it was cool, like you said, to experience it that young and have that magic happen, and to get to you know, to see that, or you know, whatever band it is for any kid. And that's why it's important that the live stuff keeps going, because kids get it, and the next generation gets influenced, and you know, they take the ball and they run with it, and it's great. You know,
the Philly market, definitely Philly radio and the Spectrum.
Yeah. But I wish anytime I get next to somebody that says, "Oh, I grew up going to the Fillmore or those shows or the Convention Center in Asbury," you know, I know a bunch of people saw the Doors at the Garden and the Convention Center and saw the Stones. And when somebody says that, I just park myself there. I just like start pumping them for questions, because it's like, you know, it's a cool thing. And you know, like you're saying earlier about writing a book, Maury's sister there, unless somebody tells you about these stories, they're lost. Like I did a tour with Hubert Sumlin, guitarist for Howlin' Wolf's band, a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And we toured Canada, a quick tour of Canada. And I said to Billy, the MD, I said, man, does Hubert like to talk? And he goes, yeah, he'll talk to you. So I happened to be up early, and he would come down early for breakfast with his manager. And so we'd sit and have breakfast every day on the tour, and I'd say, Hubert, what about that time, you know, this? Oh, man, we played the Fillmore West with this guy, Alice Cooper, and Wolf wouldn't come out till you put that snake away. And he'd start telling me all these stories. But great story he told me. He goes, we were playing in London, and he said, this kid came out sitting with the band, Jimi Hendrix, and he said, he came in, he goes, I thought 2 things after I heard him play. I thought, one, man, that boy plays loud. That kid plays too loud. And he says, the other thing I thought, there goes my job.
Oh, how about that?
So he thought, you know, Wolf was gonna, you know, fire him on the spot.
Right. It's nice to get. I've seen some of his interviews online.
Yeah.
Joe Zook was just posting something about him. And,
nice. He's great.
He played City Gardens, I guess, and Joe played with him.
Yeah.
And So yeah, it's good to have people, people that are older, of course, get them documented.
Yes.
And Richie Cole tells me stories all the time, and I'm like, Richie, man, we got to get these stories on tape because
that's great.
Sonny Rollins and just some of those guys.
That's great, and once those guys go, like you said, you gotta keep those things alive. It's great.
Yeah, and some of the more obscure people too.
Right.
That don't, like we were talking about.
Even we're talking about the City Garden stuff earlier. The book that just came out and the movie they're doing.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. All those shows that were there. That was a whole scene that was right in our backyard. It was our hometown.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but the little bit I did, you could feel that. But that's cool.
Yeah, I got into Lemonheads and the Pixies and stuff later, kind of after they played there. I was
Replacements, all that.
Replacements,
stuff.
They was playing around the corner. We'd be like around the corner at the Extension. You remember? Stevie T's.
Right.
I'm sure you played there.
Yes. And I remember going my buddy going, I'm going to see the Ramones tonight. Like, wow, the Ramones, they're there like every other month. I'll just go catch them next month. Oh, it'll be next month. Next thing you know, it's done. The place is closing and they're breaking up and dying. It was like,
isn't it amazing that the Ramones played right around the corner and it was like, oh, the Ramones are playing there again. Yeah, I'll catch them next time.
I'll catch them next time. That's it.
What the? Oh my God!
What was I thinking? But it was such an important, serve.
Joe's Sound. I mean, I'm sure you remember them.
Yeah,
That's the whole Richie Sambora connection.
Yeah.
With Trenton way back.
The brothers scene and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, because he knew he was in a band with Ernie.
Right, sure.
And
he just did the Christmas thing, didn't he? He stopped in to play this past Christmas. He came down. That's what it's about, getting that inspiration. On Steve Jordan's DVD, I think it was a journalist, Timothy White. He's since passed away, I believe, but he said on there, which makes perfect sense, good music makes you think about the music. Great music makes you think about yourself and your possibilities and what you want to do. And I think that's really true. You hear something and you get so inspired and, going back. And even talking about, when I mentioned you, when we were playing with Pete.
Yeah.
Us seeing you guys as, I think, Pete's parents' basement with all the gear and pedal. I think you got a pedal board. And it was like, these guys are pros. We got nothing. I got a little broken down, equipment, but that's what it's about, and getting inspired and going, man,
I think that's how Dave kind of really, because he was younger and he was always around.
Right. That's great how things happen.
The fusion stuff kind of happened before that.
Right.
Where it was playing a really fast Rototom.
Yeah.
Stuff. Remember Rototoms there?
I remember Pete had a 24-inch gold sparkle Ludwig.
Right.
Was what he was playing at the time. He had the snare tune like Bruford. He had this great snare sound, and he had the drums all muted. And
I got the pictures of it.
Yeah.
And what's it sound like in the cans when you're up there in front of 80,000 people? I mean, is it pretty balanced?
Funny thing was, when we did the stadium tour, when we did the South American tour, we did no sound checks, and we all had in-ears. And with the in-ears, they were just, the levels were set, and they stayed the same, and it was crystal clear like you were in a studio. I could hear everything being in the stadium. The minute we got to Canada and we played the first arena show, I think, or maybe it was Spokane Arena, it was like being in a garbage can. It just was like a bowl of soup. Everything was coming back at you.
Even with the in-ears.
Yeah, even with the in-ears, you had to adjust everything. We did. I think we did about, the sound check was really more to kind of hit some songs we wanted to hit than it was. I mean, quickly get your balance, but it just, everything was, it was just kind of pushing back on you. So you would kind of get that.
Does the visual help? I mean, you're kind of hearing it, but also I would think a little bit of visual would help if the bass player turns around a little bit and you can kind of get, see his head kind of come down on the one. So it's a combination of.
Yeah, it is, and it's a wacky thing because when you're in a club, you're used to being 4 feet or 3 feet from the next guy, and those stages are like I could be 10 feet from the next person. John was out front; he was 10, 15 feet in front of me. I'm on a huge riser in the back of the stage, and sort of like that. So it's a different thing, and you do have to sort of get into it, or get your vibe with it a little bit. Unfortunately, I didn't have any ramp-up time. I just sort of got thrown into it. So luckily, I'd played some bigger places, not a lot, but it was cool that when we got on stage in those, we did, I can't even pronounce the stadiums. I do have it written down. We played, like the one in Argentina. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of one specific. Well, they were all stadiums. They were all sort of like a MetLife or something like that. But you're in a bigger stadium kind of thing. But it sounded great. I was shocked that it sounded crystal clear.
Yeah,
I could hear everything I wanted, and actually Tico's drum tech. He was my tech, JD, and he sat right behind me, literally 2 feet from me, with a board. So anything I needed, all I had to do was turn around and just say a little bit more of that, vocals a little more up. But it was great. So it was cool. So
guys watching like a hawk, man.
Yeah, he was.
Example of like where you were just like, wow, man, look at that. That's something else. How that's run.
I think it was everything from the. They would literally take our bags. I would get a phone call saying, "Hey, Rich, how you doing? Good morning. Van calls in a half hour. Just want to make sure you're up and ready to go."
A Secretary of State or something.
Yeah, it really. I mean, we really moved like presidents. We moved like presidents. We had some bodyguards in South America. You had at one point we had a guard outside of our door. Sometimes people will slip past security, or they know the hotel you're staying at. I mean, they might be hip to if you're using an alias or something. But we had people ready. They'd come down. We had security, and they'd bring us in, get us in the van. We go right. Do the show. One thing I didn't experience was the one day I went to take my bag on stage, because a lot of times I had a friend of mine who got stuff stolen out of his bag one time. We were playing a club near Philly, and ever since then I take my keys and my wallet and I keep everything with me. But I start to take my bag on stage, and Bobby said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm taking my bag up. And we go up. He goes, No. He goes, "Everything stays here. Don't you have a tag?" And I said, "No, they didn't give me a tag." He goes, "All right, I'll tell so and so we'll get you a tag." So I had a tag, and everyone had a specific number. So the bag would go in a roped off area backstage, and I didn't have to worry about it. I could put everything in there, my keys, my phone, and that would get picked up, and that would be in the van that I would get transported back to the hotel in, and then would get taken up to my room. So it was crazy. I mean, take my wet clothes off, give them to our wardrobe girl. Next day at the arena, or the arena at the stadium, they'd be back, dried, clean, pressed, everything. So it was like, whether it was that or equipment or the food. I went one day to the Staples Center early. I got there early. I had to get out of my room across the street. So the one girl that did all the food and the catering, I got there early. And usually we would get there and it'd be some healthy stuff before we go on, soup and vegetables and stuff. And then afterwards there'd be a meal. But I got there early, and she said, "Oh no!" She's like, "I don't have the stuff out. I'm so sorry." Like this and that. And I said, "No." I said, "It's okay. Like I'm just coming here to crash early and hang out."
Yeah.
So it was the attention to detail was so great, and it was really great to see that. And it was a pleasure from top to bottom to work with everybody that way. And everybody was cool and happy to be there. And it was like, the way I think it should be, 'cause I've been on, I've been in van tours, and I've been with bands that were like miserable with each other and didn't talk and, vindictive. And I'm not going to do that because this person, and it's like, man, you're there to work together. You're trying to have a good show and a good vibe and have a good time. And, but it was pretty amazing to see and be a part of for even just for a minute.
There's got to be moments, just moments.
I was like, man, I'm not in the opening band. I'm not playing it. I'm not playing a stadium at 2 p.m. to 3,000 people. It's like, this is it. And you're seeing, and you're seeing, all these kids that just saved up their money to see in this concert, and they're singing along to every song. And there were definitely a couple moments where I caught myself looking in the second, third balcony, level, going like, holy crap! Like we just played a couple shows with John down in Mexico, and we were at dinner one night. We all went to dinner, and of course there were fans like waiting outside. We were coming out, and certainly weren't waiting for me or the side guys, but I came out and I recognized a couple of people that had been to shows, and a couple of girls came up and she said, "Oh, we saw you in Chile," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like did you come here from Chile?" And they're like, "Yeah, we came up." And I was like, wow, it's still a far ride from where we're at near Cancun to Chile. It's still like an 8-hour ride. So, but it was cool. And she's like, "Oh, thank you for coming down there and playing. It was cool." And so that's really cool to hear that.
Those fans in Rio are pretty extreme, man. Like there's that Ramones footage when they went down there and they were like mobbing the car like the Beatles. And
it's like Beatlemania. I mean, we had same thing, barricades. They're waiting for you. They know your hotel. They're like, when I went to go to sleep that night, they're singing, Bon Jovi songs. I'm trying to like get up for the gig and get rest, and they're literally like outside your window, and you're like, wow, this is, you realize the, how much it means to this, to everyone.
It's a little dangerous and scary, I think.
It is. Well, there's some, and same thing. Some of those you got to watch. Yeah, sometimes it is a little dangerous. that history is pretty neat from those little clubs. And you know, he played Trenton State, he played the War Memorial. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool that.
Man, that's hard to do. You know, to belt it out like that, and then just wake up the next day and do it all over again.
It is. I mean, you know, when we did those shows at the Pony, when you realize how he's leading that band, and it's like a freight train. I mean, you know, he is leading it, and it's all got to be on that same page. So he's spearheading it. You know, he's the captain. We're helping him steer it in, but he's. Man, it's it's a pretty powerful thing to be. I got a chance to stay 4 feet away from him, and he's leading it and calling out changes or doing it. You know, we didn't really rehearse with him. We just had a sound check, and it was a quick sound check, real quick.
Oh, okay.
But pretty cool. Yeah,
that's real nice.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, pretty amazing experience to be able to stand there with them and you know, for 2 seconds be able to play songs that are iconic. You know, people's lives. You know. Yeah. People. It'll probably sink in later, you know what I mean? That I got a chance to play with him, more so than now. I mean, it already did, but like you said, it's like God. He's like an institution now. You know, he'll probably be on a stamp soon. You know.
Yeah, because things happen in life where they're real, but they don't feel real sometimes. You know?
Yeah, they're little. I mean, people asked me on that tour was like when you said like when you looked up, there were moments that were definitely surreal. Yeah, there were surreal moments where I'm like, I'm here, I'm playing these songs.
Jumbo Vision or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. The Jumbotron. And it's like, right. I mean, John was nice enough. I thanked him. He gave me a shout out at the end of that Rio show. Okay. And I was like, man, I did not expect that. Like my friends were freaking out watching it, you know, with family. At the it used to be a Holiday Inn. It's a Ramada now. And it's funny. A couple times I've wanted to go up, and I think I am one of these days. I go past it all the time. I want to go up to the management and go, hey, can I go into the ballroom? Because this is where, it's where I saw Buddy the first time.
Oh, really?
Just to walk into that ballroom and see it.
I got pictures, a couple of him on the stage with Trenton State. Or one that's
do too.
One that's like this far away. He's got his towel on. Yeah. Because we met him after the show through Dave. I'll show you next time. I still got my Slingerlands.
Oh, nice.
From Chet's.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
when it was
79. 5 Wow. And I still have the phone that Dave cut out for that middle insert thing. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I still got it's like
my soul, and some of it is expensive. I was going to buy one of the things you sit on, the little boxes.
Oh, I have one. Yeah, the
yeah.
Right there. I got the main one.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. They're great.
Got one. Look at Richie. I love this coming up.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. What time do you guys go? It's Saturday? Yeah, I'd like to see somebody who really,
I'm looking at various percussion stuff.
Oh, that's cool. You got the great little stand too. Awesome.
He was funny. Yeah, you should get in touch with him. He's funny. He's still doing the thing. He still has a Slingerland up there, and I was busting his chops. I said, Dave, man, you gotta get some DWs, man. You're messing around those. He was using a set that was in a fire, and like he's putting all these different heads and these old cymbals, and he goes, all right, bud, tell me, go out there and tell me what you think of these cymbals. And I said, all right, Dave, the hi-hats sound amazing. This sounds good. That I don't like. I said, if you like it, like, use it. But I said, this is not good. And he's like, all right, cool. So I said, yeah, just my 2 cents. I think you should just go get a DW and get some stuff.
Okay. Buddy switched from Slingerland to Ludwig. I have this article from Modern Drummer from, remember Cheech Iero?
Yes.
Yes.
Another
Cheech interviews Buddy.
Yes, I remember that one.
Ludwig, he's like, they started, or Slingerland, he's like, Ludwig made a better drum. I went to Ludwig.
Right. And then I think at the very end of his career, he switched back to those radio cams from the 40s. Okay. He had a guy restore him, which was pretty awesome.
Oh, okay.
Man, I'd love to hear some stories from Richie.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to do one of these with Richie here.
Okay. You can come over,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I'm just going to pull him in here. We've been busy. I see him like almost every day. He lives right up the road.